Сезон IT на радіо Сковорода продовжує найбільша технологічна конференція України та Східної Європи IT Arena. 50 спікерів з найуспішніших компаній світу, виставка найновіших технологічних розробок, битва стартапів, фестиваль електронної музики Futureland та, як завжди, якісний нетворкінг. 29 вересня, 1 жовтня. Арена Львів. Квитки та деталі на itarena.ua.
Друзі, повертаємося в ефір Радіо Сковорода. Ви можете нас слухати на radioskovoroda.com, а можете нас дивитися на Фейсбуці, на нашій сторінці Радіо Сковорода. Мене звати Андрій Чемес. Буквально кілька хвилин тому була Світлана Кирильчук. Вона говорила про квантові комп'ютери. Де би ще Світлана могла знайти таку тему, як не сьогодні на IT-арені на Радіо Сковорода. Ще раз зі всіма вітаємося і маємо наступного спікера. Буду зараз переходити на англійську, тому що взагалі на IT-арена майже всі говорять англійською. Всі доповіді відбуваються виключно англійською мовою, тож англійська наша рідна мова на наступні 2 дні. Сьогодні і завтра, так це точно. Буду представляти вам нашого гостя, але мушу зачитати, щоб все в нас було правильно. В нас в гостях є Patrick Newbery, and I will talk English right now. Patrick is the Chief Digital Officer at GlobalLogic and the Chief Strategy Officer at Method, the design agency of GlobalLogic. He works closely with world-famous brands and help them to update and upgrade their design. And we can name such companies as Bell, Apple, right? Am I right? And so on. Hello, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Right now we are in Lviv, and first question about Lviv, because you came from San Francisco, right?
I did, yes.
I think it's pretty warm right now there, no?
Now is the best time in San Francisco, so the fall is our summer.
Okay. And how do you like Lviv? How do you like this contrast, like San Francisco, Lviv?
I love it. Actually, last week I was in India, so it's even more contrast.
Oh.
So I was India, San Francisco, now Lviv. Last time I was in Ukraine, I was in Kyiv. Lviv certainly has a lot more character. It's a lot more fun to kind of get out and walk around. So having a great time.
Okay. We hope you enjoy Lviv because you are staying here for 2 more days, right?
I am, yes.
So lots of things to see. What about IT Arena? Because organizers of IT Arena, they say that this is the biggest IT event in Eastern Europe. What do you think about that?
This is a very exciting event. There's a lot of great things going on here, a lot of great people, a lot of great exhibits. So it's very fun to walk around and talk to people. Certainly a buzz going on here. There's a lot of startup thinking. There's a lot of innovative technology thinking. It's very fun. Very exciting.
Okay, let's talk shortly about outsourcing because lots of American IT companies, they come to Ukraine for cheaper developers, for cheaper workers, for cheaper IT workers. I know lots of companies. Can you compare the difference between IT in US and IT workers there and IT in Ukraine? What is the difference, and how do you think why in Ukraine it's so much cheaper?
Well, I think you're looking at the local economy kind of sets the wages across industries, right? And so for a country like the U.S., which has a fairly entrenched and long-term capitalist market economy, wages have been going up for a number of decades. Things are relatively expensive, so if you can find a country that has a lower wage point, but the resources and skill sets are relatively equal, you're going to go there. The challenge is, though, that in most situations, that price differential doesn't last very long. It may be 10 years, 15 years, but eventually the local economy wage goes up and the cost difference is not there anymore. The other thing is that in many cases, you're going offshore. You're outsourcing not only for the lower cost, but for skills that you don't have onshore. And I think one of the things we've been seeing from the U.S. since about the late 90s was that Eastern Europe was getting better, faster, kind of en masse at technology than a lot of U.S. developers were. So it's almost in many ways that when we look at a country like Ukraine, there's a skill set in addition to a cost differential that makes it very attractive.
How do you think when could it happen? When can it be then that in Ukraine we will be more into original products than to outsource?
You know, there's an interesting parallel. So there's a hardware company called Asus. They make computers, computer hardware, and they started off as a manufacturer, contract manufacturer for Dell. So we'll make these parts for you. We'll make these parts for you. And Dell at one point said, well, we're looking for a partner that can do this. And they said, well, let us try it. Eventually, they got so good at doing it that they could actually do their entire computer themselves, brand it themselves, and start a business. So there's a historical precedence that the offshore actually learns better than onshore and becomes a competitor. The other thing that happens is that technology changes, so that what country A business is based on in terms of technology might actually not happen the same rate in country B. They may actually jump ahead and adopt new technology faster. So I think that's what's likely to happen in Ukraine and in other countries where you're seeing right now a cost differential, but the actual implementation of technology might be a generation ahead of the US. So again, I was talking to someone with GlobalLogic here in Ukraine. They've got internet at their home that is 100 megabit, $2 a month. US, it's 35 megabit, $35 a month. You've got a better infrastructure, right? So if you think about services that require that infrastructure, they're going to happen outside the US.
Okay, so the answer is soon, okay?
I'm not putting a date on it.
Oh, okay. So we are close to product theme, and what is design for you? Design for products. What design means for a product? Like let's talk a little bit philosophically.
So design is both a verb and a noun, right? So for a product, most people think of the noun, the outcome. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it do? But the process of design is also very important. What we believe is that design is actually it's a skill set. It's a way of looking at things that needs to be involved all the way throughout a product life cycle, should be in part of the company at every level. A lot of people think of design as simply a stage where, okay, you've defined the product, you're going to engineer it, we just need the design to complete it. But that misses the advantage of design. They can actually look at a range of different opportunities, problems that need to be solved. In addition, when we talk about products, there's very few products today that actually are not service-based. So your phone, for instance, it's a product, but it would have no value if it didn't have services running through it.
Of course.
Right? And with services, if the customer is not engaged and getting value on an ongoing basis, they're going to stop paying for it and walk away from it. Mm-hmm. So for businesses that are more service-based, design becomes very important, because now it's not, oh, the product is done. It's always on. You look at a company like LinkedIn, they're shipping new product on a weekly, if not daily basis. So design has to be continually operating. But then design is looking at the product itself, but it's looking at multiple products. It's thinking about how do we keep this together as a coherent customer journey. And then it also needs to be working with executives about what's changing in our business and our industry. What future opportunities do we have? So I think of design as just another function in business that has to be operating all the time. It's not just the stage that completes the product.
You mentioned iPhone. It's interesting to think about them, because everyone talks about their design, and the function is like slower, and the camera is not that good as Samsung did like a year ago. But anyway, everybody wants a new iPhone because it has nice design. So can we say that design sells better? Even if the design has more benefits than service and then the functionality in nowadays, especially when we saw that presentation of iPhones, their main goal for this year is like dinosaurs, emojis, piece of little shit that smiles, and all this entertainment thing. So we see this trend that this more entertainment, more interesting design maybe in nowadays sells better. No?
I think it depends on what the value proposition is for the customer, right? Because we can take a phone and we can say, look at all these capabilities. But if at the end of the day, I'm just taking snapshots of friends, putting them through Instagram filters and putting it up on Facebook, Do I really appreciate the difference in a camera? Could I tell the difference? Probably not. So you have to think about, what are people really using it for? Is it the hardware features, or is there something about it that is really a determining difference? Or at the end of the day, do they simply like it better? Because when it comes down to do they like it better, then design has an edge, right? Because now if it's a form factor, if it's an aesthetic choice, then they want to have that. You can't rule out the effect of brand as well. Apple carries a lot of brand cachet with it. Would you rather be seen with a no-name phone that has a wonderful camera that can take a close-up picture of the moon, or an Apple phone, right? Most people would prefer an Apple phone because they're going to look cooler, right?
Yeah.
So I think design has to think about all these things, right? And I think the businesses have to realize that there's many aspects to creating value for a customer and engaging a customer. Design is one of them. I had a talk with some friends a couple years ago about iOS versus Android and which was better. And I said, well, actually, they're designed for two different kinds of people. Android has a lot more customization, a lot more features and powers, but it's harder to use. Apple iOS has actually reduced the kinds of things that you can do, but it makes it easier to use. If you're more of an engineering mindset, analytical, you want to do things for yourself, Android's a better choice. If you simply want something that is easy to use and fun, you're going to go with Apple.
Okay, have you heard about some products from Ukraine? Like maybe any startups that are growing right now? For example, PetCube. Have you heard about that
I've
product?
heard of PetCube. I'm not that familiar with them, but I did. I was talking with someone this morning about some Ukraine startups, and they were asking my opinion of whether I thought the ideas were good.
There are some, right?
Well, there's startups everywhere.
And right now, I don't know, maybe you heard about Sandstone. It's a device that makes your voice.
Yes.
That takes you to the text.
Yes.
And you can sync it with iOS.
Yep.
It's all, they have really nice design, and everyone is talking about that they're like pretty much into Apple design, something from there. How do you think is it okay for new products to take reference from already made designs, like
Sure.
the trends?
Sure. I mean, that happens all the time, and I don't think we're limited to technology for that to have happened. The question you have to ask is, what are you doing with that, and why? If you copy an existing brand too closely, you're not really creating any differentiation. You're basically building a brand that does not have a standalone capability, right? Or can be confused with another brand. There was a point in time where we worked with a lot of companies that said, we want to make this industry be Apple-like. And one of the challenges is you can't simply bring aesthetics and design and say, now you're Apple-like. You have to think about all the things that Apple has done, from OS to applications to hardware to market. So they've created ecosystems that makes it much easier to launch a product. If you are a small company and you're launching a standalone product, sure, it can have the same aesthetic and design sensibility of Apple, but it's not the same thing as Apple. Now, the thing I think is interesting about this startup is, what problem are you solving? You've created something that looks interesting, it looks impressive, it looks, from a design standpoint, Apple-like, but why do people want it? Why would people use it? If you can't solve that, then you got a problem.
Okay, let's talk about method and about GlobalLogic. What are your main paths? What are you doing actually in method for GlobalLogic?
So GlobalLogic acquired Method in 2011. And primarily for the first, maybe 3 or 4 years, we kind of operated as separate companies. You know, they were engineering, we were design. If there was an opportunity to work together, we would and we could. But by and large, we could also just work in parallel. Nowadays, more and more companies that were not deep in technology are realizing that they have to become technology companies. The value that they create is driven by software, but they have to interface and create software that creates value for customers. So all of a sudden now, design and technology are two sides of the same coin for solutions for most businesses. So what I do a lot of is to help the clients understand how their world is changing, how design and technology come together. And in many cases, it's not like design does something, then hands it to engineering. in many cases, design is working at different levels in parallel with engineering working. So I try to help make sure that the strategy and the approach maximizes the outcome.
So you're the person who makes things look better and function better, and even maybe this will make sales better, right? Like everything together.
And think about the future, right? So if you're a company and you have a brand, what is your brand known for, and what does that mean going forward? How does that brand get reinterpreted in a digital age? So helping companies think about what's their product and service strategy, how does that leverage their brand position, what does this mean for their infrastructure, their architecture, as well as the product experience. So it's not simply about let's help them design the product.
But you're talking about strategy, and let's talk about future. Who knows better than the strategist? What will be with design? What will be with products? Let's say in future 10 years. How do you see this development?
Well, a lot will depend on a lot of external factors outside of technology and design, such as global trade policies, the effects of climate change on populations and therefore markets and where people are spending money. But if things continue the way they are just from a business and technology standpoint, I think what we're going to see is what I call the distributed user experience. Already right now, if you've got an iPhone, you probably have iTunes, you probably have maybe a Mac somewhere in your house, right? All of these are part of an ecosystem, but they all share one thing, which is they have a screen-based interface.
Yeah.
When we start looking at IoT, we're going to have a lot of things now that don't have a screen. We're going to have a lot of interfaces that are voice-driven,
like this,
motion-driven, light, sound. What does it mean to create an experience, design an experience that works there? If you look at the smart home a couple years ago, you could have a smart light bulb, a smart lock, a smart thermostat. Each one had their own application on your phone. Yeah. That's not going to make sense. So the consumer experience of technology has got to change. It's got to be freed from devices and become something a bit different. And I think as you see that, you'll also see that with miniaturization, with the power of processing, with connectivity, that it's more possible to have products become a lot smaller, a lot more integrated. I talked to the company last year that was doing smart fabric.
Oh my
that
God.
could actually sense muscle movement as a way of helping with physical therapy and injury recovery.
Yeah, that's cool.
So if you imagine that every aspect of your life could be microprocessor enabled, be consuming and generating data, and be connected, that's a different experience. I think that's what we have in 10 to 20 years.
And what we see right now, that technology is not only for the technology. We have not for IT sphere or something like that. We have technology for medicine. We have technology for education, for social different acts and whatever. So what do we see right now? That IT gets more and more into all aspects of our life, like everywhere. So another thing that I would like to ask about medicine, because in Ukraine we have like very not good, if I can say, a system of medicine, and maybe IT and IT decisions can make our health better, like literally from the hospitals to home to everywhere. Like what we gonna see in medicine, how do you think, in the future, and IT?
Well, you're going to see a bunch of different things. So number one, you're going to see things like nanotechnologies, genetic engineering. You're going to see a whole change in the chemical and pharmaceutical and kind of medicinal side of things, right? Second is big data. So you're going to see statistical analysis that allows for changes in the way that you diagnose and treat. You're going to see excuse me, a shift from treatment of condition to prevention, because it's much more cost effective to do prevention.
Yeah,
so when you put all those together, we should be looking at vastly different kinds of healthcare services in the future.
Okay, the future is now. I think that the slogan was last year or this year. Let's hope that big data will help will help us to have new knowledges. And about big data, I wanted to ask, because we have keynote speech for tomorrow. It's Alexander Nix from Cambridge Analytica, and this like top theme right now about the Donald Trump election and about Brexit in Great Britain. What do you think about big data right now, and is this big data in good hands?
So there's a quote by William Gibson, I think, that says, "The future is here now, just unevenly distributed." And I think companies like Cambridge Analytica represent a future of big data that is being used to connect to people in ways that you haven't been able to before, where now we can parse and figure out who you are, how do you think, what is your mental model, and what's the best way to communicate with you. Now, that's a tremendous advantage in some ways. In other ways, it's a very dangerous thing.
Yeah.
Because now you may not understand that mechanism is going on. The message that you receive, you may think is universal when it's been tailored just to you to get you to do a certain thing. So there's really a kind of a double-edged sword with every technology.
How can we be safe?
We have to be aware. We have to be aware that technology is both positive and potentially has a negative side. We have to think. We can't rely on technology to do everything for us. We're still human. You know, we should still kind of step away from the iPhones and the games and the VR every once in a while, experience the world the way we were meant to. And we should be slightly skeptical, healthy skepticism.
So if somebody will propose to you, make all your data open for the safety of the world, will you do that? Or you will have a doubt?
It's an interesting thing, because that kind of debate's been around for a while, that the more open everything is, the less one has to worry. I think if you look at human psychology, it's a very hard thing for people to necessarily be comfortable doing that. It requires a lot of changes across a lot of aspects of culture and society. I think I would prefer to say, I will do less to create data than necessarily make all my data open.
Okay, thank you so much for this interview. We hope you enjoy Lviv. We hope you enjoy Ukraine and IT Arena. Hope to see you at the party tomorrow or day after tomorrow. And I don't know, any advices, any words that you would say to Ukrainian IT workers?
I would say that you guys are at the forefront of bringing the future to light. So keep doing it, but keep thinking about there are two sides to technology, and make sure that we don't run too fast into areas that get us in trouble.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Right now we had an interview with Patrick Newbery, CSO at Method and CDO at GlobalLogic. I will translate, Chief Digital Officer, right? So, thank you so much for this interview. Я зараз перейду на українську мову. Ми продовжуємо свої ефіри з IT-арени. Попереду у нас дуже багато класних спікерів. І пам'ятайте те, що говорив Патрік. Бігдата – це дуже круто, але основне, в чиїх руках вона є, і завжди трішки залишайтеся скептичними до всіх пропозицій, до всіх рішень. Мене звати Андрій Чемес, ми продовжимо зовсім скоро. Дякую.